You're listening to the Sustainable Angler, and my daddy's the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to the Sustainable Angler, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of fishing, conservation, and sustainability. I'm your host, Rick Crawford. In this episode, I talk with Allie Wines, founder of Uncommon Ground Communications. We dive into her journey from practicing law to leading Protect Our Winters Canada, and now helping brands communicate climate and sustainability with impact. We explore the power of storytelling, emerging greenwashing regulations in Canada, and how honesty, transparency, and data-driven messaging can build trust. Allie also shares how outdoor brands are missing a major opportunity to connect with a growing number of values-driven anglers and outdoor enthusiasts. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, OHM Radio, 96.3 FM. If you like what you're hearing, an absolutely free way to show your support is by leaving the show a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. This episode of the Sustainable Angler podcast is brought to you by Emerger Strategies and A New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging.
We set out with a New Earth Project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. You know, people send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project is it's like, we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
Fishing taught me that everything in nature is interconnected. Just as a fiddler crab, a tailing redfish, and a marsh ecosystem are connected, so are our businesses and our planet. And we have a vision of businesses and the environment thriving together. Imagine a company that not only champions the sport of fishing, but also leads on climate action and conservation efforts. Products and packaging that are friendly to marine life and that degrade harmlessly back into the earth. It's not a dream, it's a strategy, and that's what we do at Emerger Strategies. We guide businesses on their sustainability journey by helping them measure and improve the sustainability performance of their operations, products, and packaging, all while boosting profits. Because when nature thrives, we all thrive. Together, we can make a difference for generations to come. Visit our website at emergerstrategies.com. Let's protect what we love together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing people are probably going to notice is I have an accent. I grew up in Australia, but I moved to Canada about 9 years ago, and this is home for me now. And what I do is I run a business called Uncommon Ground Communications, and I help businesses and nonprofits tell sustainability and climate communication stories in a way that is effective and fun and hopefully moves the dial for them.
Love that. And what was how did you get into this world of sustainability communications and climate communications?
Yeah, I sort of strangely, I guess, I started my career as a lawyer and then a management consultant.
Oh, wow.
But communication, I really noticed that communication was the thing that more than anything else, I think helped to shift people's behaviors at times when we most needed that to happen. So I got really curious about why that was and how we can do that well. And so I've been focusing my career purely in communications for about 15 years now. And I guess I spent a lot of time in the corporate world, kind of doing, change management for big companies and for the government. But I'm really passionate about trying to make the world a better place. That's part of my core values, to, try and make a contribution during the time that we've got here. So I really shifted my career into social impact work. And when we moved to Canada, Protect Our Winters ended up becoming a client of mine. I'm a big skier, I'm a big outdoors person, so that was a really natural fit. And then a couple of years into that relationship, I had the opportunity to step in as the executive director of POW Canada. So I was in that role for a couple of years and had already become, I think I had been my whole life, super passionate about nature and conservation and trying to do things in sustainable ways. But POW just really cemented that for me. So when it was time to step back into my own business, that's really what I decided to focus on. And I'm very happy I made that choice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Protect Our Winters does amazing work for climate advocacy everywhere. So I'm sure that was thrilling to work with that organization. What were just kind of on that note, what were some of the lessons maybe that you had taken from that experience and help, I guess, maybe help get Uncommon Ground off the ground?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, or there's many things, but a couple of things that really stand out to me about POW and what they do so well. I think the first one is really nonpartisanship. Everybody loves the outdoors. It doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum or if you don't sit on the political spectrum at all. It's something that we can all relate to and we all feel passionate about. And I think they do just such a great job of getting that message out there, which is kind of so important in the times that we're living in. I also think that they do a really brilliant job in leveraging the athletes. We talk a lot about kind of the channel is the message when we're, as it's kind of general principle of communications, and having those athletes as the channel who spend all their time in these places that they often see changing in front of their own eyes that might affect their safety or their ability to do their jobs. But also just kind of having that cool and stoke factor opens so many doors, and trying to find ways to do that through messengers that people really want to listen to is really powerful.
Cool. Well, thank you for that background. Excuse me. Thank you for that background information. And let's sort of dive in here a little bit and talk about sustainability storytelling and things like that. So I'm curious to know what role does storytelling play in driving real change when it comes to sustainability, and how is it different from simply sharing data or facts?
Yeah, such a great question. I think we relied for so long on just purely getting the facts out there, and we believed that, if we put these kind of compelling numbers on the table, everyone would be shocked into doing things differently. And eventually we've sort of figured out that that just doesn't work. And I think today what we really need is both. The facts are really important because they show that we're telling the truth, that we've kind of got the receipts for, this information that we've been gathering for such a long time. But we know from neuroscience and so many psychological studies that it's actually storytelling that facilitates real behavior change. And it's just because stories generate emotions. All of us can connect with that, whether it's kind of the hare and the tortoise teaching us to keep it humble, or, early kind of Indigenous stories about creation, or Bible stories. They're things that we remember. They're things that move us and kind of create a moral code for us to operate within. So, yeah, they're just really, really effective. And for businesses, what people tend to expect is they want those stories to relate to the core business, and they want the business to have that data to show that they're doing the work, whether that's reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, or whether it's fighting for cleaner rivers or fewer toxins, whatever that cause might be. Being able to join the dots by using data saying this is why this issue matters to us, but then having a really powerful story to back that up, whether it's your foundational story or, there's a really great business that does toxin-free, waterproof materials. And their story is talking about how they've managed to reduce illnesses and cancer in their workers just by removing these toxins from their products. And that's so powerful because it's just such a great human interest story that, we all care about our health. It's something that we can all relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that in my work. I think most people who listen to this podcast know I do sustainability consulting, and a large part of what I'm doing is working in the background, right? And it's pulling that data, and it's saying, okay, like we need to be able to demonstrably show that we're not only measuring things like greenhouse gas emissions or waste or things like that, but that we're also improving, right? We have some goals and we're working towards that and improving. But the brands, in my opinion, and even my clients that do it well and are most in the best position to make the business case for sustainability are the ones who then incorporate that into their marketing and storytelling and communication, because that's where the consumer is going to remember a story versus, oh, well, did you know that they reduce their footprint 17% this year? Like, that's sustainability nerd stuff that I'm into, but so.
Totally. Yeah, I say that to people all the time. Your ESG strategy isn't your communication strategy. And they're both really important, but they're different. So have that big, 50-page report full of the kind of gigawatt hours and all of that kind of data that we can nerd out on, but then break that out and tell the stories behind it and show people why it matters.
Yeah. So I guess sort of, I know you just shared a little story, but are there any other examples of sustainability stories from brand, nonprofit, that has really moved you or helped shift public perception? And if so, what made it so effective?
Yeah, there was actually one that I came across relatively recently from a Canadian brand called Etee, which is ETEE. And they do very low packaging products, kind of household products, personal care products, that sort of thing. And their founder did this video that I just thought was fantastic. So he's a paddler. I think he was kind of a semi-professional kayaker. And he filmed this video at the place that's most meaningful to him to go paddling in. And he talked about the moment that he realized how water connects everything on Earth and how important it is to preserve those waters if we want to preserve the places that we care about and have a sustainable future. And so he just talked about how that was the origin for his brand. And then he went on to speak about how his brand isn't perfect and that there's no such thing as a perfect sustainable company, and that they've made mistakes along the way, and that they have these technical, complex challenges that they still haven't figured out how to overcome. And it was just so effective because he connected that story to the thing that he loved and was passionate about. And, a lot of Canadians paddle. So I think that's something that other people can identify with as well. But that humility of talking about, the mistakes and the lack of perfection is just such a powerful way to build trust. And it's so rare to see a brand have the courage to do that. And I wish more brands would do it because it just works so well.
Yeah, I agree, and that's actually something that I tell my clients is, look, sustainability is not about perfection. It's about becoming the best version of your brand. It's no different than a person trying to be the best version of themselves, right? As I make mistakes, I slip up, I don't stay on track, but I still strive for that, and I think it's very similar for a brand. And I love that you shared that story because that just makes it so much more authentic. Like just you telling that story, I'm like, oh, well, this brand is just coming out and saying like, hey, like I love this stuff. I'm going to do what I can. I'm not perfect, but I'm going to do the best that I can, right?
Totally. I trust that brand now. If they come out and tell me that, they think that this is the most sustainable product they've ever produced, I'm going to believe them because they told me about the times that didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, that's a really important, I guess, little nugget there for any brands out there listening to think about. Of everyone wants to appear bulletproof and perfect, and probably could go a long way to, as you said, be a little bit more humble and just say we're working on it.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so I'm going to preface this by saying I am super guilty of this in my own thought process and communication and sort of preparing for our interview. I was thinking about it. I was like, I feel like I probably do this a lot on my social media and stuff like that. But nevertheless, many sustainability stories can feel overwhelming and guilt driven. That's what I'm guilty of. It's like, so how do you strike a balance between, or the right balance, I guess, between urgency and inspiration in your work? Because I know that from my own personal experience and trying to communicate the urgency of climate action and things like this, I have I have certainly tried to inflict guilt on people to be like, how could you do this? And so I'm curious to get your take on striking that balance between the urgency and the inspiration.
Yeah, we've all done that. I think when you care so much about something, it just feels like, oh, it'd be so hard. I think it's a similar answer to, what storytelling and data. Mm-hmm. We need both. We need the hope and we need the urgency. I often think of it actually in terms of, my background in change management. And there's this guy, his name's John Cotter, and he's considered like the godfather of change management. And his kind of phrase that he coined was that you need to establish a burning platform. If you've got everybody kind of standing around doing the same old thing, how do you get them to jump to something new? Well, pretty often they're not going to jump unless the platform's on fire. So that's kind of where we're at globally. Like arguably the platform's a little bit on fire. Yeah. So we have that, but we're not necessarily seeing a lot of jumping, or we're not seeing it at the speed that we need it to happen. And I think that's where the hope comes in, because you need to give people something to jump to. So part of our role in telling these stories is to create a vision that's more compelling than the thing that we've got right now. So much sustainability messaging is kind of built around scarcity. You have to give this up or change that, or, we're all going to live in a cabin and sit around fires and not have our modern comforts. And while that might be true in some respects, there's so much in a sustainable future that we do have to look forward to, and that we can share with people as, this is a place where we can all thrive and we can continue to do business, and where we can have a clean and healthy future for our kids. So yeah, that balance of things aren't so great right now, but look at this amazing thing that we can create together. Which is a really good balance.
Yeah, that is really, really good advice and needed advice. I feel like, especially in this world that we're living in. So keeping things hopeful and something that can inspire you to get up instead of maybe make you a little bit more pessimistic. I think that the hope is so important in this.
Definitely.
Okay, so I guess somewhat similar and on these lines, but what advice would you give to brands or organizations that want to tell authentic sustainability stories without greenwashing or sounding self-congratulatory, which is anyway. I'll stop there, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's such a great question, and it's interesting. I think so often we think of businesses and corporations as being the ones out the front, kind of tooting their own horns and saying how great they did, but often, particularly, I think with small and mid-sized businesses, you have owners who are pretty humble and they're just trying to run a business in this field that they love, and it's hard to get out there and sell all the great stuff that you're doing. I think a couple of things in terms of finding the stories. Every business has them. Founders have amazing stories about why they began the business. There's nearly always a character in the business, a staff member who's got a great story or an unusual personality or a great hobby. There's all of these stories can surface if you ask the right questions and you dig a little bit. In terms of not greenwashing, it sounds so obvious, but just be honest. I think there's this perception that greenwashing comes from really disingenuous, dishonest brands kind of setting out to trick consumers.
Right.
And it's not always the case. I think it just often comes from kind of an excess of enthusiasm and maybe often coupled with not fully understanding the impact of the sustainable actions that you're taking and how much difference they actually make. So I would say to marketers and consumers, marketers and communicators, try and make yourself aware of that. Go chat to the sustainability team, ask lots of questions, get yourself informed, and just don't overstate what you're doing. Tell the truth about what it is that you're doing. Don't set big aspirational goals unless you've got a really solid plan to back them up. And just be aware of the legislation too. So, I know in the US, you guys have got the FTC green guides, which are really, really helpful. Here in Canada, there's a bunch of new greenwashing legislation that's just come out. The Competition Bureau has some really great online guidelines. So just kind of keeping yourself informed and being measured in your approach about how you talk about it is the safest bet.
Our green guides are supposedly, I thought they were supposed to be updated last year. They haven't been updated, but I think you bring up a really good point in that a lot of green, and if anyone is listening and doesn't know what greenwashing is, it's basically when a brand intentionally tries to deceive the consumer by making vague claims just because all the studies and all of the data and all of the reports are showing that consumers support brands that align with their values and consumers value the environment. And so there's this, it's painted as there are companies out there that are intentionally trying to deceive you. And to your point, particularly with, like with a merger, we work with fishing and outdoor brands. That's I've never seen that. I've never seen a fishing or outdoor brand intentionally trying to deceive anyone. But it's just for example's sake, it would be like someone launched a product and just said eco-friendly and didn't. Like, what does that mean? Like, that's so vague, right? And you like compared to what? And so that's what we mean by greenwashing. And so I just, in case folks aren't sustainability nerds like us, they may be going, what the heck does that mean? That's what that means. So basically, there's some regulations around it that are just trying to keep, at least have some type of standard where you're substantiating claims and things like that. And that goes back to Allie, to your point, where it's the data that can inform the storytelling. Like that data is can help you substantiate some of these claims you may be making.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of using those recognized methodologies. I think too, like there's been quite a lot of fear and I would say some misinformation lately about greenwashing, and some companies have felt like, they need to go silent on their sustainability initiatives. Like green hushing is, I guess, the opposite side of that. And exactly to your point about the fishing and outdoor brands, like for the vast majority of companies, it's just not a concern, provided you're honest and you're setting reasonable goals and you have a way to show that you're making progress against those goals, or that you're not, but that you're tracking it. You're going to be absolutely fine. And there's just such a huge opportunity for brands to tap into that real wish amongst consumers to try and do better things by the planet and to make sustainable choices. So, I would say don't miss the opportunity out of fear that you might accidentally get caught up in greenwashing, because it's very unlikely if you're doing the right thing with integrity.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, super valid point in that you're actually doing your I feel like you're eroding trust with your brand if you're silent about some of the things that you're doing.
100%.
Instead of building that trust.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit. I guess the landscape of sustainability storytelling, right? And so, I guess you could say we do a little bit of storytelling on this podcast and things like that, but that you've also got everything from websites, blogs, podcasts. You've got social media like TikTok and Instagram and all sorts of other stuff that I'm not cool enough to know about, and I'm sure that people are doing. But in your opinion, how is this landscape of sustainability storytelling evolving, and what excites you most about the future of this space?
Yeah, I think all of those channels that have come up in the last few years just create such huge opportunities. And there's so many people, like way cooler than me as well, Rick, doing super creative things on TikTok, and they're building communities on Discord around sustainability and climate and public lands and all of the things that people care about. So, we no longer have just the newspaper as one source of information about all of this stuff. We have, no matter where we are, we've got access to really great both information, great storytelling, great ideas, and just access to different ways of doing things as well. How can you make this topic interesting to people? How can you connect with someone on that emotional level or make sustainability fun? So I think that's what excites me about it, because not all of us process information the same way. We don't always want to get, entertained or, have things come to us in one particular avenue. So just seeing all of these really creative channels and really creative people popping up is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I kind of, I do have, as you were talking about some of this, I do have a question, a follow-up that kind of came to mind also, which is, from your experience, and you work with nonprofits and outdoor brands and things like that. Are there any sort of common mistakes that you've seen sort of organizations make when it comes to sustainability storytelling that is, I guess, common enough to where you would notice it?
Yeah, I think the guilting and shaming is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
We all kind of, and we all do it exactly as you pointed out. but kind of implying that people, shouldn't drive a gas-powered car, or that it's kind of wrong to eat meat, like whatever the issue is. There's no evidence that says, first of all, that individual action is going to make any meaningful difference to climate and sustainability issues. Pretty much everyone in the world would have to get on board to move that dial. So I think focusing on that creates division, and it makes people feel that if I'm not perfect, then I'm not entitled to take any action. Who am I to make a better choice, or who am I to pick up the phone and call my senator because, I drive a truck? Well, guess what? So do I. And I work in sustainability communications. So I think we need to create spaces where everybody feels really welcome, whether, we're businesses or whether it's nonprofits, just inviting everybody in, because this isn't a partisan issue. This is about creating a future that's such a great space for our kids, where they can still ski and fish and hike and do all of the things that we love doing. And that shouldn't be controversial. So, yeah, let's make it welcoming. I think that's the big one for me.
Yeah, I think that, and I have experienced this particularly online, where it's like if you say something and publicly about some things that you care about, you can have some backlash sometimes online with people like commenting and heckling, and that's usually the angle that they take, where they're like, hey, well, don't you drive a truck, or whatever, and you're like, well, that doesn't prevent me from not trying to create a better world or a better future, right? I mean, that's
yeah. They're mutually exclusive. Yeah. And if we waited until we were all perfect, we'd be all sitting around as skeletons. So
yeah, very good point. So are there any in your experience, are there particularly any impactful, I guess, mediums, whether it's film or social media or writing, that you found to be particularly effective, or is it all of the above? Or
it's so audience dependent. I would say to your brands and nonprofits, really know who it is that you're speaking to. What's their demographic? Are they older, younger, male, female? Are they technologically adept? Do they look at videos on their commute into work each day, or do they not look at anything because they're on a bike or they work from home? Having that information and understanding who it is that you're speaking to is really going to dictate that choice of medium. There's, I think, a lot of pressure for brands to move to video, and it is a really powerful storytelling medium, 100%. But it's expensive and it's time consuming. And if that's not the right channel for your audience, don't invest all of your eggs into that basket, mixing my metaphors there. But you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way that you can connect with them that's more effective. Maybe they just like email and that's old school, and that's okay. So yeah, I'd just say pick based on what you know about who it is you're trying to talk to.
Well, I also want, I want to know if there is, because you do a lot of cool work, and your clients are fun. So I'm curious if there's like a client success story or a project that you've worked on that you're really stoked about, or just something along those lines that where you've been able to work with a nonprofit or a brand and help them out in their storytelling and communication.
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky because I love my work and all of my projects are interesting in different ways. One I really enjoyed recently, I've been doing a big project with the Forest Stewardship Council up here in Canada. Okay. And if folks don't know who they are, they essentially are a sustainable forestry they use market-based incentives to promote sustainable forestry. So people have probably seen the logo on papers or envelopes that they use, maybe on wood products. And they're looking currently at how managed forests in Canada can help to mitigate climate change, contribute to biodiversity goals. And I was leading the communications for that project. And my favorite part of it was getting to go out in the winter and tour a forest that has really, really high standards of biodiversity. And I spoke to the forest manager, and I got to kind of hike around the forest in thigh-deep snow. And just, I totally nerded out, like getting to learn about the fire management strategies that they use. And they work with a local Indigenous community to set deliberate fires to encourage regeneration and to manage wildfire risk. We talked about kind of bug invasions and the return of native species. Like, that was just so exciting, I think, because I could see absolutely how the choices that they'd made to be a more sustainable operation, because they're a logging operation as well, had led to the return of all of these amazing species and, yeah, incredible biodiversity in the area. So stuff like that, I think, gives me hope.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I really, yeah, it kind of lights my fire a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super cool. And also, while we're here, I think I don't know if you'll have some more of these coming up, but I saw that you were doing a kind of a sustainability storytelling webinar. Can you speak to that as well, and how folks can get more info?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is online. If you go to my website, which I'm assuming we can link in the notes afterwards,
Yep.
There's a link available to that on the website, or if you look up Uncommon Ground on YouTube, you'll find it there as well. So that's the recording. But I, excuse me, I partner with a graphic designer colleague who's based out of Montana to run these events. We're planning to do them semi-regularly. They're always free, they're open to everyone. And our goal is really just to help businesses and nonprofits tell these stories in ways that are effective, and to help you guys to move the dial as much as we can. So yeah, keep an eye out, jump on my newsletter mailing list. You'll be the first to hear about it. I only send newsletters about once a month because I get annoyed by too much emails. So yeah, it's just a heads up for anyone, and would really welcome anybody to join those and to come and ask questions afterwards. That's what we're here for.
Cool. Yeah, I saw it on LinkedIn, and I wanted to attend that one, and I was bummed that I couldn't. And then I saw that y'all were doing another one. I was like, oh, sweet. I was like, I'm gonna get on the next one then. So that's cool.
Yeah, 100%. It's I think something that's become so clear to me recently is how important it is to create community. You know, we all have our skills, and there's stuff that I know I'm really good at, and there's other stuff that I'm absolutely not good at all. So trying to find people to work with to make those stories even more powerful is really compelling, and just makes you feel a bit better about the world. You're not sitting on your own trying to, solve everything single-handedly.
Also guilty of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Allie. So I know that you said that you love to ski. You love to get outdoors. I don't know how big of an angler you may or may not be, but I'm curious to know if there's any sort of outdoor activities that particularly inspire you, and for the work that you do, and if fishing happens to be it, or a part of it, I'd love to hear a fishing story you might have.
Yeah. I think anytime I can be in the mountains, I'm a very happy person. I was so lucky when I was growing up. We had a family property that sat next to this beautiful, beautiful lake with the mountains in the background. So we'd ski in winter, and in summer we could go water skiing on the lake. And we did go fishing. My grandfather tried very hard to turn me into a fisherwoman. So I remember this one time we had I don't know what you guys call them here. In Australia, we call them a tinny, like a little tin motorboat, like with an old 2-stroke outboard motor.
Yeah. Yep.
We had one of those. And so my grandfather took me out, and there's a fish in this lake called redfin. And they're not very big, but they're absolutely delicious. And so we did all the right things. We went out early in the morning. We got the bait that we knew that they liked. And it was my first ever time like catching a real fish other than little minnows and things. So I felt this bite on my line, and I'm pulling it in. I think I was about 8 years old at this time. And apparently, I don't know because I never saw it, but apparently this fish was huge. And it was the biggest redfin anyone in the boat had ever seen. And my grandfather was so busy staring at it that he forgot to get the net, and the fish just jumped off the hook and swam away. So that's my one that got away story.
Love it. Well, that just goes to show you to bring the conversation full circle. It's in storytelling and feeling. You probably remember the feeling of that fish. So
100%. Yeah, I still remember how furious my aunt was with my grandfather.
That's hilarious. Well, Allie, this has been awesome. I know we have been chatting for a bit, and I was excited to finally get the chance to come up for air and spend some time chatting with you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge of sustainability communications and storytelling. But wanted to, where can folks get more information if they need some help with sustainability communications?
Yeah, come and find me. My business is Uncommon Ground, and the website for that is We Are Uncommon. Or you can just drop me an email, Ali@WeAreUncommon. And I'm on all the usual social things, LinkedIn and Instagram. So happy for people to connect in any way that works for them. And I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, Allie, thanks again for your time and for doing this. Appreciate it.
This was really fun, Rick. Thanks for highlighting the importance of storytelling. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right. Special thanks to Allie for joining me on the show and for all she does to help companies clearly communicate their sustainability and climate stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Thanks for listening and for protecting what you love.